Welcome to the Athletes in Motion podcast, from race to recovery, with your hosts, Tom Riegel and Kenny Bailey.
Hey, Tom, how are you?
I'm fantastic. Kenny, how are you?
I am doing fantastic. Thank you for asking. We have on our show today Victoria Brumfield. She is the CEO of USA Triathlon. Victoria, welcome.
Thank you. Great to be here.
And by the way, congratulations. The interim CEO title was removed a couple of months ago. Is that correct?
That's right. Yeah, it's legit.
It's legit.
You're
they got you whether
now.
they want you or not.
I know. I had to be on my best behavior for like 3 months.
How did that feel?
Once you get that 90 days out of the way, you're good.
Yeah.
There you go. So I noticed that you've been at USA Triathlon for a couple of years. Before that, you were at Virgin Sport and at Lifetime and other places. What was it about USA Triathlon that drew you to this role?
Well, I absolutely love endurance sports. I mean, that's kind of where my heart and soul is. I didn't grow up an endurance athlete, but actually my first job out of college was working for a sports marketing agency in New York City. And one of our very first events was the New York City Triathlon in 2001. So
Wow.
I actually started working in the sport of triathlon very early on in my career and started participating in the early 2000s. And it's always just been, I guess, a common thread in my life. I mean, even when I left to go do other things like bike racing or running, I always came back to the core of swim, bike, run. And so when I had an opportunity to come to USA Triathlon, it just felt like home.
Well, that's
Nice.
great. And so as your background, it sounds like you've been doing some athletic endeavors. Did you grow up athletic, or is this something that is late
No,
stage?
I played golf. I mean, that's like,
That's
So, okay.
sort of athletic.
I guess.
That's a
I mean,
skill.
you wear a belt. Is that how sporty?
Yeah.
You know, I was always very drawn to being outside and outdoors. And I played golf growing up. I grew up in a golf family. I was really into riding horses and snowboarding and hiking and just being in the great outdoors. I never participated in team sports. And I don't really know why. I don't know if I didn't really have access to it, or maybe my family wasn't into it, or maybe I'm just not good with people. I have no idea. But I think when I started working in endurance sports, it was just a natural draw for me because I love the challenge of things, but I also love to be alone. And so it was this like really nice mix of community, but also training on my own, which I really love.
Yeah, it's not one of those things where you've trained up and then, somebody, you throw a ball, somebody drops the ball, or you're playing volleyball and all of a sudden, it's sort of like, it's you, rather your success or your failure.
I drop balls all the time, but it has nothing to do with triathlons.
Okay.
Yeah, sure.
Great. And just so we get it out of the way, the cat's name is what?
Okay.
When
It's
she
a
pops in
long
and out.
story, but I'll give you the whole story of the animals if we have a minute. So I have Betty White, the Boston Terrier, who during
Nice.
COVID was very lonely. So I got her Cher, the cat, and then we started going back to work. So I took Betty to daycare, and then Cher was lonely. So I got Cher another cat named Dolly Parton. And now the cats are best friends. So the dog was lonely. So then I just got a dog named Reba McEntire. So I have a
Nice.
household of very strong, dominant female voices.
Outstanding. And
So any
all
one
in
of
the-
those is going to be in the background at any time. So
Yeah,
we'll just,
yeah,
it's going to be sort of cat watch now for us
I
at this
love
point.
that.
A lot of activity, yes.
Great.
So-
And so is triathlon, is it a sport that you participate in, or is it something that, I mean, you probably do, or maybe that's a stupid assumption that you do, but
No, it's not stupid at all. I mean, when I first started working in the sport, I thought there's no way I can do this, right? Like these people are superhuman. And then what I realized is I started running and I got a bike and I started biking and I got back in the pool and learned how to swim properly and realized, you know what, I could do this. And I started with a sprint triathlon for women only in the early 2000s, absolutely loved it. And I've been participating ever since. I did my first full actually last year in 2021.
congratulations.
Yeah, last year did my first full, but
Nice.
I've done probably a dozen halves and a whole bunch of shorter distance stuff. I also I just love cycling. That's kind of where my passion is too. I think running, I always tend to get injured, although I have a good coach now. So that's
That's good.
healthier. But yeah, so I did Unbound Gravel the last few years.
Nice.
Nice. Look at you.
The last couple of years. I really love riding long and off road. So I like to mix things in addition to triathlon.
That's fantastic. And so I think that you bring that experience then as CEO.
Yeah, 15 hours eating Uncrustable sandwiches. That's the
that's important. I mean,
Yeah.
that
I tell you, we got to get a sponsorship with Uncrustables at this point. I mean, just like that is the go-to, the go-to.
It's like me tackling soccer moms to, for the last box of Uncrustables.
There you go.
Exactly. Oh, that would be perfect.
Like, you don't understand.
I love that.
So tell us a little about USA Triathlon. I know, and I'm going to plead ignorance here. I write the form out every year. I spend the money on USA Triathlon, and then I go race, and hopefully nothing falls off the wagon. Right? What? Give us sort of the elevator pitch, the corporate deck, the 1 minute pitch about.
Before I do that, I'll say, that you're an amazing athlete because you coach with a USA Triathlon certified coach. So you're coaching with the best.
Only.
And I think that, people don't, and actually I was one of them, right, who didn't really realize what USA Triathlon did, but we exist to grow and support the triathlon and multi-sport community. That's our whole purpose for being. And so we oversee a few things. One is the Olympic and Paralympic pipeline. So making sure that we have the world's best athletes competing at the highest levels, at the Olympic and Paralympic level. And then in addition to that, it's our responsibility to make sure that we're serving and supporting the entire endurance sport ecosystem. So just based on this conversation right now, what that looks like is making sure that we are providing the highest level of education and mentorship for the coaches that are out there, so that not only are they progressing and tapping into what's possible for them in their professional careers, but making sure that we have really strong, consistent, safe events for athletes to participate in. So as a coached athlete, you have a place to go, something to train for, something to look forward to, and then the whole community around it of clubs and support systems to make sure that we have a really strong ecosystem of racing. Because the reality is, triathlon shouldn't just be a one and done. It should be part of who we are, right? Like, that's the beauty of having a multidiscipline sport, is that it's about having this dynamic experience of always having something different to do to stretch your body and keep you healthy, and making sure that we support all the tools and resources associated with that, so that no matter what age you are, what level of competition you prefer, that you have a place to go in the sport.
Yeah, it's about the active lifestyle. And this is the perfect active lifestyle, especially for those of us that get bored with one sport.
Well, and it's not just bored too. It's this over specialization. It's there's something about not only your body being more balanced, but also your mind, right? Like, I love knowing that I have different forms of athletic pursuits that I can follow, whether I'm traveling or no matter where I live, right? There's something that I can do, whether it's swimming, biking, or running. And that's become core to how I live my life, not just how I compete.
Yep.
Yeah. And so one of the interesting challenges of triathlon, right, is when you look at other sports, for some reason, it seems like triathlon turned into sort of an event sport rather than a lifestyle, right?
Right.
To your point, I'm going to get to this goal, and then once I hit that goal, I can check it off. It's a checkbox thing, right? We were joking around about pickleball. We'll I guess we'll call it a sport, but you don't hear somebody like going, "I'm going to show up to
LeBron James invest." You're
you're a legit sport, yeah.
There you go.
Actually, he invested in Canyon bikes, so cycling.
There you go.
See?
So maybe we'll see LeBron out there someday. Just a really big bike, just.
Him and Reggie Miller. Reggie Miller's on a bike.
But you don't hear you don't hear, I'm going to the big pickleball tournament in October, and then once I get that done, I'm going to high five and I did it and I go. People say I play pickleball.
Right.
People on triathlons, the challenge sometimes is I'm going to do a triathlon. It's like a marathon or any other things. How do you try to get past that sort of event driven idea of a one and done versus sort of the lifestyle? What kind of education do we I say we because I feel like we're all sort of part of the cult now. How do we get that transition to occur?
Yeah, I mean, honestly, I'd be really curious to see, especially hear from you, Tom, about what your perspective is as a long distance athlete. And I'll start by saying, I personally think that one of the challenges is that the perception of the sport has evolved into one where people feel and think that they can only be a triathlete if they do some huge, iconic, long distant event. And the reality is that while we all have the potential to do that, much more so than we believe we do,
Mm.
it is a very difficult thing to fit into your life as a continuous thing that you just do all the time, right? Because it takes up time and resources. And if you have a family or a big job or other interests, it's hard to have all these things living together. And so I think helping shift the mindset and the narrative that it's not just about these long distance races. It's not just about Ironman. It's actually, when I got into the sport, and maybe it was similar for you, it was all about short course racing, right?
Mhm.
Like I traveled around the country doing St. Anthony's and LA and Chicago and Philly and New York, and like all these races that were these incredibly iconic races, but they were short enough that you would go compete in them like you would a 5K or a 10K or maybe a half marathon, where it's something to train for, but you could train for it. Like used to train taking spin classes, in New
Yeah.
York, or like going for a jog, 5K a couple times a week. It wasn't this crazy epic experience that my whole world evolved around. And I think helping shift the narrative that the majority of triathlons out there, and I'll say multi-sport because they don't even all have to be swim, bike, run, but the majority of multi-sport events out there are not these crazy epic distances that take over your life. There's something that can become part of just the way that you live, and you don't have to race all the time. But if you want something that makes it sticky and gives you something to aspire to, you can, and you can do it in a way that it's not like this epic build and epic decline. It's just part of how you live your life.
Yeah, and that's something that I try to impart on any athletes that I talk to, is that it's like short course is a whole world that's amazing, and that's what makes it a lifestyle. Trying to do long course racing takes up, like I said, so much time. I do it, and it seems like I have to promote it as a coach to get other athletes because they only seem to care about the crazy long distance stuff. But I actually enjoy doing short course racing. I started off that way I was doing 4 or 5 races a year. I was in LA, I was doing it all around the LA area. And that's what was fun. I mean, that's what makes it's actually doable at that point and enjoyable. And then for me, challenging myself was that piece where I wanted to just push a little bit further or try this or see where the edge was. And that's just kind of a thing I do on the side. But it shouldn't take your life over so that you're not. I talk to too many athletes that they're trying to figure out how they deal with their spouses and their family and how they go through. I had a young athlete last year, his first Ironman distance race, and so we went through and we built up his pattern to go through, and I said, okay, these are the couple weekends that you need to take pictures and have pictures of your family and let them know that there's a picture of you, and you're not going to see them these particular times. I said the rest of the time you need to spend time with your family. Here are the down weeks. Here's where you need to make sure that you're spending extra effort because of this extra distance that you're going, and when you get back to your short course racing, then have fun. Like bring everyone in, go on rides with your spouse, go on rides with your kids and other friends, and you can make it fun, and you can do more of it. And I think that's where we're getting a little bit of that stigma, is everyone thinks that triathlon is an Ironman. And it's not. I mean, Ironman is just one of, like, we even talked about the the off-road races, the draft legal races, the super sprints now that are coming along, everything else. It's just like, there's so many options for people just to incorporate this into their lives. And then you don't have to train 15 hours a week or more. You can do it on just a few hours a week of, you can even just roll off the couch and do some of these. It's kind of fun.
I couldn't agree more. I participated this past spring in our multi-sport national championships, and I hadn't been training for triathlon. I was training for a long off-road bike race or bike ride, I guess. And I jumped into the multi-sport event. I did 4 events over 2 days. They were so fun. I mean, one of them took me 25 minutes.
Yeah.
I think the longest one took me 45 or something. And they were so fun. And I just, it was a kind of thing where it just felt like I was going to like a spin class, or doing something like challenging, but it was fun and it was entertaining, and I could go to brunch afterward and not feel like I was going to fall apart. And I love that about the sport. And I think making sure that people understand that that's something to aspire to as well. Like, you don't have to be a long distance athlete. You don't have to do an Ironman. And if you want to do one at one point, to your point, to test where the edge is, that's okay, but you can't live on the edge all the time.
No.
It's not sustainable.
Nope.
And this should be a lifestyle, right? It's
Yeah.
taking 3 different sports that make our bodies our best selves. And
Yeah.
so
Yeah.
making sure that we can do that in a sustainable way is really important.
You're a
Yeah, and I think
triathlete
the word-
regardless of the distance.
Yeah, and I think the word just needs to be removed, right? That's
Well,
the thing, right?
I
Yeah.
do it all the time.
We all do it. Yeah.
Yeah.
I know. It's funny that you say that, because I say the same thing. It's not just a half
Yeah.
or just a sprint or just a whatever,
Yeah.
but then I do the same thing. So it's it's a narrative that's so embedded in us that even if we believe otherwise, it just becomes part of the narrative.
Yeah. And what's funny is you deal with that stigma, right? Because everyone, the first thing you say, oh, you do triathlons. Yeah. Oh, you're going to Hawaii? No, I'm not going to go to Hawaii. I probably won't see Hawaii unless I pay a crap ton of money to go to Hawaii. Other than that, but that's not it. And so what I've noticed is I say, well, I'd rather go fast than far, right? Like this year, I'm going to go fast, not far. So I'm going to try to, my test isn't necessarily the distance. My test is, can I beat PR times? Can I be faster? And I guess that's what, there's so much, it feels like triathlon's somewhat lagging on the running community in a couple of different ways. One, the running community, Boston's kind of the thing, right? Everyone's like, oh, did you qualify for Boston? And that's the big get. But everybody, is doing a 5K. They're doing the half. Not a lot of people are saying just, right? You're like, oh, I've just signed up for a half marathon and this is going to be my cool thing to do, right? So I think that's one thing that as triathlon, as we try to get more exposure, to your point, to say, I love what you said, the idea that I can go do a triathlon, be done at 11 o'clock and go have brunch, right? That's freaking fantastic. I accomplished a cool goal and now I get to go, eat a lot.
Still eat an omelet. And actually, Kenny, one thing I want to pause on when you said you want to go fast, not far, I don't think you have to do either.
Exactly.
And this is one of the things I've loved about having a coach. So I'll back up to when I first started doing triathlons. I did my first marathon, and I did a couple other things, and I got injured, and I was getting injured quite a bit. And it wasn't until I started bike racing that I got a coach. And I want to pause on that for a minute, because my perception was you only got a coach if you wanted to go fast and far.
Correct.
Either or, fast and or far. And what I didn't realize until I got a coach, and there's more of in bike racing, I guess everybody has a coach. I don't know, at least in New York City, like it's just part of, like, if you register for a race, you have to have a coach. I don't know. So what I realized, though, in getting a coach, and I've been coached ever since then, is they've helped me realize that because they've met me where I am. And where I am is I may not, sometimes I want to go far, and sometimes, well, actually I've never wanted to go fast, but sometimes I want to try and do a new distance. But what they help me do is they help me make sure I stay within wherever my guardrails are. And for me, I just like waking up every day and swimming, biking, and running in a way that I feel healthy and strong. And that doesn't always mean going fast or far. And that's what's helped me stay in the sport in a healthy, sustainable way. So I will also say coaching has been a game changer for me. It's like the Steve Jobs black turtleneck of fitness, because I wake up every day and I never have to think about what I should be doing. I have somebody who's analyzing my sleep and my output and looking at my life schedule, saying, okay, actually, here's what's sustainable for you right now. And that actually might be a lot less, or it might be a big training block. It just depends. So I think it can be all the things: fast, far, or just continuous.
Yeah. And my point was that I that was my excuse on doing the short one. Like I had to feel like I came up with an excuse, right? Oh, you're doing the smaller ones. Well, yeah, because I'm going fast. And everyone's like, oh, okay, well, that's good. At least that's worthy, right? Where it could be like, how about just go have fun? And I think you hit on a really good point, which is, if I were to go to a workout and I want to start a workout program, I hire a personal trainer to help me figure out kind of form and motion so I don't injure myself. So to your point, coaches aren't required just because you got a big epic thing. It's just, how do I move correctly? How do I make sure I can have fun and not get injured and be able to continue to do those cool things I want to do in a way that I don't get in my own way and injure myself.
Right.
Yeah. Having the right coach, to add a little bit to that, it allows you like I always say, the body doesn't know the difference between the training stress and the life stress. With the right coach helps you navigate the stress in general, your life stress and your training stress, and adjusts it so that you can continue on in a healthy manner.
My coach tells me more of what not to do than what to do.
Yeah, exactly.
Just before we got on this podcast, I was reading an email from her. I asked her if at Endurance Exchange, which is our industry conference coming up in January, if I can do the Austin half marathon. That's the Sunday before. And she wrote back and said, no, you're riding your bike down the coast for the week before. You shouldn't do anything like that. For like
That's funny.
But if I wasn't coaching with her and she didn't tell me that, the first thing I would do is register for that race, because I just love events. I mean, who doesn't love a free cup of water? You know?
There you go. Well, that's what they say. And now you're CEO. You know, the joke is leadership. Sometimes you just have to stop stupid. So that's what coaches do, right? So there's my leadership, guide to you there if you needed one. You know, just your job is to stop stupid. So one of the things that I noticed also in the half marathon, at least, role now, there are more women signing up for half marathons than there are men. How do you see, how is USA Triathlon, what does that look like right now? What does that landscape look like? And do you see that changing also in triathlon as well?
So we see a higher proportion of women in shorter distance than we do in longer distance. And I think it depends also on where you are geographically. But my understanding is for long distance, and this could vary, but for long distance, it's typically around 75% male, or 70% male, 30% female. I think that's probably the standard. In general, when you look at triathlon in aggregate, we're about 38% female, 62% male. So does that add up? Okay.
Yeah.
Sure.
Carry the one. Yeah.
Hold on.
Okay. I think we got it.
Right
So it's not as high as we want it to be. And running didn't start that way. And actually,
exactly.
About running, you mentioned I was with Virgin Sports. So we looked at a lot of different running industries across the world. And in Europe, it's still very male dominant in running, much more so than in the United States. So I think it just varies depending on where you are. But in shorter distance running, it is predominantly women. And in aggregate, the running community is I think more female dominant. I haven't looked at the numbers in a long time, but my understanding is that's still the case. So we're always pushing for more female participation. And I do think it's increasing, especially at the shorter distance, because the reality is, and actually we've seen this in our coaching and race director demographics, and I'll talk about that in a second, is that especially coming out of COVID, we know that women predominantly were more disproportionately impacted during COVID, and their ability to manage, homeschooling and work responsibilities and home responsibilities. And so I think we've seen a shift to an even lower female demographic over the last couple of years. And where we've also seen it is in our coaching and our race director population, which we were very close to equity in those two groups. And now we're seeing that drop slightly. And I personally think that's part of the COVID effect. So hopefully we can get that number back up. But we do see a stronger number of female representation in the coaching and race director community than we see in the participant community. So that's something we're super focused on.
Yeah, there's unfortunately, I'm reminded too much. Just had was at a dinner with some friends of ours, and I was talking to one of the my wife's friend who is an avid runner. She's very good at it, right? She just runs all the time, averages like 12 to 15 a day. I hate her. Yeah, she's just really good. I mean, this is what she does. That's just she lives. Unfortunately, she's carrying no fewer than 3 products in order to keep her safe. Right. She has a knife in her hand. She has a spray in her hand. She has a bunch of stuff. And it is my personal goal to make sure that she doesn't have to do that. But I'm trying to kind of, yes, the COVID effect is other thing. Is there a safety issue that's going on too? I know cycling, when you talk to a lot of cyclists on triathlon websites, cyclists are getting more and more sort of pushed off. I mean, I used to race bicycles as well. I'm very, very comfortable on a bike. I'm very comfortable with traffic. People starting out in this sport. How's that safety aspect, especially for women? Is it on the rise? Is it an effect? Is it something that is? I doubt it's isolated, I guess is my question. Is it something you worry about?
First, it's so tragic what happened in your your area
Yeah.
recently with the female runners. So I think the reality is we always have to be vigilant. And I'm the first to like not think about it. I run on a trail in the dark all the time. I miss being in New York City. I've never felt safer than I felt running in New York
Isn't
City.
that funny?
Really?
Because I ran in Central Park. You can
Yeah.
run in Central Park 24/7 and you're surrounded by people and it's fully lit. And it's just, there's emergency phones everywhere. There's cell service everywhere. Where I live in Colorado now, it's not the case. So if I run on a trail, there's definitely a transient community that lives along that trail, and it's pitch black, and it's isolated from, homes and streets and things like that. And so, yeah, I do think about that. And, that's just my own personal experience. But I also believe that, look, there's a lot of indoor opportunity to train. I think the reality is that I love the sport so much and I love movement so much, and it's my therapy that I'm going to do it no matter what.
Sure.
But I'm going to take precaution. Going back to your comment about the road, I've loved getting off road. Buying a mountain bike and a gravel bike were the two best investments I've made since I moved to Colorado. And it has not negatively impacted my road triathlon. It's improved it. And so I spend a lot of time now doing off-road riding because I feel safer from traffic. It's more mentally stimulating. So even if you're not comfortable on a mountain bike, which I know a lot of triathletes aren't, first of all, you can ride a mountain bike on the road. Like, it's just all it is pedaling. In fact, it's better fitness, right? Because it's a little bit.
There you go.
But I ride my gravel bike or my mountain bike all the time on dirt trails and dirt roads. And what I find is that it's more mentally stimulating because there's nuance to the road. You're safer because you're less close to cars. Typically these dirt roads don't have high traffic, and you tend to get out into nature in a way that you wouldn't as much on a paved road. So I've absolutely loved that. And what I found is there's amazing dirt roads all across the country that I never realized were there before. And so I do think that for the most part, there tends to be access to roads that are less trafficked once you get wider tires. And all the bikes now are allowing for wider clearance, wider tires. It's been a wonderful change for me, and I love it.
I think getting out on the trails, running and cycling allows you have to focus on your footstep, right? You have to focus on bike handling skills. Triathletes are notorious for not having bike handling skills, especially if they train too much indoors and then they get outside. It's just like, it's the running joke, I think, in the cycling community for sure, that it's just like, oh, here comes a triathlete, everyone run, get out of the way, here they come, type of thing. So I think getting people out off road for not only for safety, but it actually, it makes them better athletes, and without having to put in too much effort.
Yeah, like you just naturally learn to handle the bike a little bit better, and you do it in a more relaxed way because you're more comfortable. You're on white. It's like driving a truck versus, a sports car. You just naturally learn to navigate loose ground or uneven terrain better. And it absolutely translates when you're on skinny tires on the road.
Yep. For
Are
sure.
you seeing a rise? And I know we've talked to some folks that put on triathlon events. Are you seeing a rise in sort of that off-road, do the lake swim instead of doing a road race, do gravel? Is that something you see growing faster?
So I think there have always been off-road triathlons. Obviously, we've heard of Xterra. There have been off-road triathlons on dirt roads that could be seen as gravel. I think triathlons branding themselves as off-road or gravel triathlons, I believe, is on the rise, and we're trying to amplify those. We created a gravel series, which is essentially an opportunity for us to promote and market those so that people understand that they're out there and available and accessible. And I hope that there's more. So as a former race director, one of the biggest challenges for operating an event is road closures, as well as finding a venue where the water and the road and the running trail or whatever the run's on, where they all intersect and there's also parking. Like, that's the hardest thing to find.
And a bathroom. Don't forget the bathroom.
And the bathroom. And
Thank
so,
you.
so when you're able to expand your options by going off road, I think that will create more profitable opportunities for race directors. I mean, the reality is you'll probably have potentially less capacity depending on what the venue allows for as far as dirt or trails, but you'll also have, fewer logistics and lower costs. And so my hope is that more race directors will be more open to our alternative formats like this.
Nice. Yeah, and I think it's fantastic. I mean, I would love to see that as well. I mean, I used to race cyclocross, and it was
Oh my God,
just,
I know. I used to race cross too. I love it.
Yeah, I would loved it, right? So in the winter, you just, you're 180 beats and, 1 mile loops, 45 minutes. It's just sheer, ass on fire, excuse my French, kind of stuff.
Like,
but it was
like
fun.
I had this vision, which nobody else shares, but what if every bike race at USA Cycling, these are draft legal races, what if they also have a run portion after? Or with cyclocross, like how fun to do a cyclocross division, which by the way, it's a closed course. It's usually like in a school or like, a random field with like caution tape. It's like nothing. How easy would it be to then also have a run portion after? I think it would be so easy to, like cross duathlon.
Oh, I'd love to do that.
Yeah, right? Yeah. And we created an off-road duathlon nationals as well as a gravel nationals this past year. And so we're excited to hopefully see those grow. But yeah, if we could add it into
sign me up, man. That'd be great.
I know, me too.
I thought that'd be great to have a section where you do one loop on a bike and then you get off and you do one loop on a run and then you're back on the bike and you loop that and then you loop back and you just do that for 6 hours. It'd be awesome.
Or like a Madison where you do one lap on a bike and then a partner who does the run.
Exactly. Oh, that'd be perfect, right?
Yeah, and the cyclocross we were doing was at night too, so it was in October underneath. They had a generator. It was funny because the race director would be like, "Okay, if the generator, goes off, then all the lights go off. Everyone just stop." And I'm like, "You're telling a bunch of people that are racing just to stop?
Just to stop?
Oh, okay."
Like the cyclocross version of musical chairs. I love it.
Yeah. Wherever you
sure
are
enough, it goes off, and then everyone's like, "Well, what do I do?" It's like, "Well, I'm not stopping. Are you stopping?"
That's how you finish.
Exactly.
Yeah.
The tree's gonna make me stop, and that's about it. So. Yeah, I think it'd be a ton of fun. I mean, sign me up. I think it'd be great. You do.
Well, nobody's agreed to do it yet, but I would.
We gotta work on that.
Well, we got 2 people that are willing to do it right now. So you got an N of 2 right now. So I think you got it. You got to start with someplace.
We need to find a location. Let's find a location and do it.
Every cyclocross location is a location. That's all you need.
Yeah.
Exactly.
The caution tape is already up. Like, what else do you need?
Exactly.
It's perfect.
You got the people there.
Yeah.
Just put a table there with some Gatorade, call it a day. So looking back on 2022, what are the biggest accomplishments now that you saw through 2022? What are those things that you guys are pretty proud that you got done?
Well, I think what was so interesting going into 2022, nobody really knew. Like, think about, going into it, whether you were an athlete or a coach or a race director or a retailer, you had no idea, were you still going to have pandemic sales if you're a retailer? If you're a race director, is your date going to actually happen? I mean, I don't know if you remember, but like January through May, we had another surge of COVID. And so it's so wild looking back that like we were still all remote in our office in the first quarter. So I think what I'm most proud of is just the stability that we've seen, not only in our organization, but in the sport. And I know that, the show up rates have been down. And I think overall, we haven't had the level of participation that we had in 2019, which 2019, by the way, was the first growth year that we at USA Triathlon had seen since I think 2013. The sport had started, and not just the sport at triathlon, but multi-sport or endurance sport in general had started to decline, right? You saw it in bike racing and all these other spaces. But 2019 was a growth year. We're not back to 2019, but we were way ahead of 2020. So I'm really proud of not only what we were able to do with our own events, but how we were able to support and amplify race directors and coaches who were able to get their businesses back up and running. We were also super focused on diversity, equity, inclusion, and access. And in 2022, we added a non-binary category to our national championships for the first time.
Cool.
We also had a neurodiverse category for our youth and junior and age group nationals, which was really exciting to see. So, look, the reality is we're focused on onward and upward, growing the sport, trying to increase the diversity in the sport so that, it more broadly represents the population of the United States and helping race directors get up and running. I think that's at the core of it. And I know what you were saying, Kenny, like, we don't want to just be like just a race sport, but the reality is we all know that things are stickier when you have something to aspire to.
Oh, absolutely.
On the calendar. Yeah. And so that's really important. And it's the crux, it's the heart of the sport.
Yeah. Very cool. And so talk to us about the Ironman Foundation. How give us sort of, again, the elevator pitch on that.
USA
Well,
Triathlon Foundation.
Foundation. I'm
Yeah.
sorry. Did I say Ironman? Oh my
Yeah,
God.
you did.
That's okay. We love Iron Man and we love the
Sorry.
Iron Man. So
sorry. Wrong. Okay, edit, cut. All right, move on.
No.
No, kidding.
Well, first, I will be first to say we love what Iron Man does for the sport, and we love their
Yeah.
So what our foundation does is it's the charitable giving arm of USA Triathlon, and they focus on 3 distinct pillars of making sure we're supporting our aspiring high performance athletes, which is across both elite triathlon, elite Olympic, as well as elite paratriathlon. So we have a lot of donors and fundraising that goes into developing that talent pool and making sure that they have the tools and resources to be the best they can be, so that we are sweeping podiums from Tokyo to Paris to LA.
Nice.
They also focus on making sure that they are funding different programs that lead to more diversity, equity, and inclusion in the sport. And so, again, going back to broadening what our sport actually looks like, not only in female representation, but also ethnic and racial representation as well, and social economic. So the last thing that they focus on supporting is youth. And the reality is, we talked about women being, disproportionately impacted during COVID. Well, youth racing and youth participation plummeted to all-time lows. And we need to make sure that we have a really strong youth base in the sport, not just racing, but in making sure that socially kids are socializing and connecting to the sport beyond races, but through clubs and community, and not just at the youngest ages, but also through high school and collegiate. We do have the NCAA women's program, which has become now that we've hit 40 universities, qualifies us for championship level NCAA sport, or to apply to become a championship level sport. But we also need a really strong club program so that young men and young women can participate across the country outside of that elite NCAA level. And by the way, collegiate club is highly competitive as well. So
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, so making sure that we have a really strong ecosystem for young people in the sport.
How do we get the high school level going on to that? Is that would to me would seem like the next step, right? So we've got the collegiate level kind of moving along in a good spot. How do we need to feed that?
Exactly.
And is it clubs, or can we do high schools? What's harder? What's easier?
Well, it's all hard, I'll say.
Yeah.
And actually, let me start with the NCAA program. So the 40 NCAA women's programs, which is incredible, about 50% of those athletes are international. And that's because we don't have the pipeline. So not only do we need to have the strong NCAA women's pipeline coming up, young American women, but we also need to have a really big club program so that we have universities and colleges that have programs across the country for young men and young women or non-binary athletes. And we need a pipeline. Like, where are those athletes going to come from? Which is why high school is so important. So high school is complicated because it's very difficult, if not impossible, to get a high school to start a new sports program. My understanding is it's a little more probable in private schools, but in public schools, extremely challenging. Now, what is possible is to replicate what NICA has done. I don't know if you're familiar with NICA, but it's an interscholastic mountain bike program that was a grassroots program. Their high school programs, some are connected to schools, but mostly what it is are community-based clubs that tap into high schools. And they're run by parents who are coaches, and they have, I think it's over 3,000 clubs across the country and 30,000 young people all competing around the sport. And some of it's participatory and some of it's highly competitive. And so what we're focused on is trying to figure out, how do we replicate that type of model so that we can get coaches. I mean, Tom, like, you're the great example of somebody who could go out and just start a club that targets high school age kids. One of our biggest challenges with high school is having succession planning, because what happens is you have a lot of really passionate parents who start a club or program because they've got a kid that they want in the sport, or the kid wants in the sport. So the parent's like, yeah, whatever, I'll figure it out. And then the kid moves on.
Yeah.
Or, ages up or ages out or whatever it is. And the whole thing falls apart. So we need a stronger system around it. And that's what we're trying to figure out. And we're super focused on going into the new year.
Yeah, I just found out the local high school, the Franklin High School, has a mountain bike team in the NICA
Yep.
format. And I was just like, I was blown away. I was like, I
Yeah.
would have loved for that as a kid in high school to have a mountain. It would have been amazing. I had no idea. And I was learning more and more about that. So it's,
So
Well,
what
and
is the barrier, I guess? I mean, you talked about, like a kid, parent wants them to do it. Is it a price barrier? Is it a perception barrier? Is it a just get attention because there's so many things out there? I mean, is it a availability of resources?
It's a
What
great
seems to be that
question.
barrier?
So there's a lot of talk in our sport around limitation around resources, because it's true.
Mhm.
You need a bike and you
Yeah.
need access to a pool, but look at what NICA's doing.
Yeah.
Every one of those kids has a bike, and the reality is you don't have to have a fancy bike, right? You just need something
Yeah.
with wheels on it. And here's what I'm curious about is, if we focus time, energy, and resources, maybe it's grant money from the foundation, and maybe it's
Mhm.
just dedicated people spending their time figuring out how do we start to cultivate these communities. Can we replicate that? And that's what we're focused on this year. So Tim Yount, who some of you probably know, that are listening, he's an icon in the sport. So Tim's worked
Mhm.
for USA Triathlon for more than 30 years. He's held every role that exists in our organization, and he's single-handedly built this NCAA women's program. And there is nobody that understands scholastic sports better than he, even beyond triathlon. He's just passionate about scholastic sports. And so he's transitioning his entire role just to focus on how do we figure this out and build it moving into 2023. And I'll be the first to admit, we have never had dedicated resources. We've certified and provide insurance for, and we've probably had some ad hoc programs or support throughout the years. I'm sure we've done different things, but I don't think we've had consistent, robust infrastructure in place. And that's what we're focused on trying to figure out how to build moving forward.
Yeah, and I think you hit it on the head. I mean, having that consistency, to your point, of someone in that community or someone running that club that's going to be there no matter what. We have this local running group around here, and the guy named Seth is the guy that runs it, and he's out there every Tuesday, and he'll take a picture of himself by himself in the rain and the cold, like, "Hey, I'm the only one that showed up," but he showed up,
Yeah.
and so he's going to be there. That's going to be there. I think, to your point, if you want to join something and you want to put 2 to 3 years into it, but the coach or the infrastructure is gone because Leslie graduated and now she's off to college and her dad doesn't want to do it anymore. It's just no more, that can't be a sustainable process. But I think that's, to me, the perception's always been, the difficult perception with triathlon is it's old and it's expensive, right? Generally, older people in a demographic will do it because they can afford to do it, because it's an expensive sport to do. And everybody loves toys. I know I love new toys. I just got a new Garmin watch and I'm like showing it off. My wife's like, "Great, you got to watch." I'm like, "No, but did you look at it?" She's like, "Yeah, it's awesome." Right. And I'm like, "Yeah, but look, it does this." She's like, "Again, cool." So I think that's part of the barrier, right? Is to break that sort of, it's an expensive older sport that anybody can get into it. It doesn't matter what you have, just as long as you're moving, right? I mean, is that kind of part of the challenge as well? Is just this automatic sort of,
I think so. And, looking at the high school side, that's something we've been talking about. Or can we put limitations on equipment so that it's not about, I'll jump and not change topics, but jump for a second too. I remember when I was producing a triathlon in Hawaii, and it was in the early 2000s, and we put on a kids race. And I just remember these little kids, I don't know how old they were. Maybe they were like 10 or something, on little mini Cervelos.
Nice.
It blew my mind.
Yeah.
Who's spending that kind of money on their kids' bikes, and how fair is that to the other kid with streamers on their little bike that just got its training wheels off? And I think the reality is that with equipment, it's really hard to normalize, the fairness across the board. But I do think having limitations on equipment can be important, and just making sure that we have some level of fairness. But I think also the reality is, when I got into the sport, I didn't have a tri bike. I didn't have a Garmin watch. I didn't have any of that. I didn't have a power meter. And what's interesting is, even now, I don't even look at my power meter numbers anymore. I've gotten back to I just want to, I have the numbers because my coach uses them to like see if,
Yeah.
I'm like totally falling apart, but it's about having fun. And I think again, it just comes back to our responsibility to make sure what are the messages that we're amplifying and communicating.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I look back at our old magazine covers and like we really honored that high level of competition that wasn't representative of a diverse group of athletes and participants. And this is what I love about the work you're doing, right? Like when we say the word athletes, anybody who's moving, who's interested in pushing their bodies is an athlete. And I think that we need to help change the narrative that there's a lot of different levels of competition and every level is welcome at every age.
Yeah. It all fits in there. We need to get away from the shiny things. Like we're constantly going after the latest, newest. I can't do that if I don't spend $7,000 on a bike. It's insane. It's crazy.
Yeah. And one of the things,
caught up in it too. I love
yeah.
it.
We all do. Yeah. Yeah.
It's stuff is fun and you don't need stuff to have fun.
Yeah. That's the key.
Yeah, exactly. And Tom and I both, we were lucky enough to have some guests on our podcast before that again, wasn't your typical, triathlete and was able to go out and do her first triathlon. And it was fantastic. I mean, Tom and I were going more nuts over that than seeing a professional that got, another 6 minutes shaved off of their time. That's awesome. That person's an awesome person, but just watching somebody do it for the first time or watching, somebody from a couch to 5K can be more enjoyable because they were able to do something they never thought they can do. And just that goalpost is your own goalpost. It's your goalpost on what you said. And we celebrate all of that. That's the fun part about it. Right. So, So 2023, you said you've got, you're looking at sort of the foundation stuff. What else is 2023 unfolding for you?
For USA Triathlon,
Yes,
it's all about growth. Like I mentioned, getting back to those 2019 numbers. For us, it's about making sure it's a few things. It's making sure that we are providing and communicating the highest level of value to all of our constituents. And our constituents are very different. Like we serve coaches, we serve race directors, we serve elite athletes, and we serve everyday athletes. So we have this diverse group of people, and value and service to each of them looks very different. So making sure that we're really focusing on serving them in unique ways that really resonates in meaningful ways with them, so that every person who shows up to a race understands the value of participating in a sanctioned race. It's fair, it's safe, it's it has high operational standards. And then making sure that race directors understand that we're going to do whatever we can to help them promote and grow their races. So that's first and foremost. The other is making sure that we really have diverse types of events that are being promoted. So when we talk about growing high school, we need to make sure that those kids have a fun place to go race. And so we now have state championships in every state, and each of those state championships should have a high school championship division. So a fun place for them to go and compete against each other as high school age athletes. Same with clubs, making sure that clubs can go compete as clubs to see, because it's fun. And then not just locally, but also nationally. So that's been something that we're really focused on too, is giving different levels of competition. And then also promoting those shorter course races that we talked about. So even if you are a long course athlete, make your training fun. Go do a super sprint or a sprint, or we're trying to get more mixed relays happening at events, which the mixed relay is, I'm telling you, the most fun you can have in an event. Teams of, 4 people all doing a little super sprint back to back, like tagging each other off and going and doing their own little, their own leg of their swim bike run. So that's been really fun. And then also for us, focused on our elite athletes. So making sure that we're really going deep and making sure that we're identifying and cultivating the best talent from high school age on up, and supporting our athletes at the highest level as they start to now compete and qualify for Paris.
But other than that, not a whole lot going on.
Nothing else going on.
That's
Yeah.
January. So
I got to, I'm like, ooh, I need an Uncrustable after all that.
I know, it's a lot.
That's a lot.
And then personally, I'm just excited to be racing again.
Yeah.
I've got a bunch of races on the calendar, and I think what you were saying earlier, Tom, about life stress and work stress is also seen as physical stress. So we'll see how much I actually accomplish. But I've got
there you go.
Well, you've got a good coach, so your coach will guide you through that stress, those stress levels, and
Yeah.
still get you to your races prepared.
Yep. I hope so.
Yeah.
So for
I'm sure.
2023 for you then, what's do you have certain races circled on the calendar? Do you have
I do. I'm doing a half distance race in April. I'm
Nice.
going to do a bunch of our races at Multisport Nationals, hopefully those super sprint and draft legal sprint and
Nice.
duathlon races, which will be fun. Which, by the way, draft legal is super theoretical for me because I'm so slow in the swim that I never have it.
So you're not going to make the first group on the bike?
Exactly.
Maybe the second group?
The fact that I could draft, is like
Yeah.
and then I think I'm gonna, it's a lottery, so we'll see, but doing Unbound Gravel,
Nice.
Leadville 100. I'm
Nice.
doing a 3-day Breck Epic mountain bike race, which will be fun.
Nice.
And then I've got a full distance Ironman on the calendar for the fall. So
Wow.
Outstanding.
we'll see.
Yeah,
I
you
got to add to my calendar.
You
then.
got some training to do.
Well, you know what though? I'll just say it, like, I don't treat any of them like races.
Yeah.
It's just my training calendar.
It's a long training day.
Yeah, that's how I think about it.
Yeah.
And so I love to be around people for events, and I love to, be at events and the expo, and I just love the whole experience of it. So for me, that's part of what motivates me to keep moving every day.
Nice.
Yeah, and your enthusiasm for it it jumps off of the camera.
Yeah.
It's really kind of neat to see.
Anything I can do to wear spandex.
That's a goal, I guess.
Yeah.
So I actually am going to try pickleball this year. I thought I would, cross over to the other side and see what it's like. So
hey, it's actually super fun. We did a USA Triathlon pickleball tournament.
Oh, there you go.
Nice.
Yeah, it was really fun. I was terrible. I did not progress in the bracket at all. But it was really fun. It's
nice.
It's nice to be able to have fun and do something that doesn't require, dripping in sweat.
Oh yeah.
Got it. Did you still wear the spandex though? I think that's the important thing.
Oh yeah, that's probably why they didn't progress me in the bracket.
Hey Vic, you can't wear your cycling shorts on the pickleball court. Excuse me? Why can't I?
It's not training time in pickleball.
The chamois gets in the way, but other than that,
it's fun.
It kind of affects your side to side.
So. Yeah. Oh, very cool.
Well, we appreciate your time today.
Thank you so much.
This is a ton of fun. We wish you luck on. It sounds like the USA Triathlon's in a great hands with an enthusiastic CEO. It's fun when you have a passion for it and you're leading a team. That makes the staff want to do some really cool stuff. So congratulations on that.
Thank you, Kenny. And honestly, thank you so much for both of you. The more positive voices we can have out there in the sport, showing how accessible and attainable the sport is, and how, everyone's capable of doing this, and they're capable of doing it in a way that it's part of our life and who we are, as long as you take care of yourself and give yourself space for, downtime and your family or whatever else is going on in your life. There's room for that in triathlon. Yeah. So I appreciate everything that you do, and thank you for having me on.
Oh, sure, absolutely. Yeah, thank you so much. Thanks everyone for listening, and all your comments and feedback. Please keep up giving us thumbs up, 5 stars, whatever it takes. It helps the algorithms find us, helps everyone kind of get out there. So we appreciate all your time, Vic and Kenny. Thank you so much. And for everyone, we'll catch you on the next one.